What is up, everyone? Welcome to Skorch the Fears. We are with my boy, my man, Luciano, a beast in Subto. It's amazing to have you on here, brother. This has been a long time coming. I think I asked you at Clever like a year ago, but like you couldn't do it for whatever reason. And then now you're here, which is awesome. And like I'm excited to have you here. I got you on IG Live. I got you on here. People on IG Live, if you want to see and actually hear Luciano, you're going to have to come to YouTube. So go to YouTube, just look up my name, you'll find it. And so, yeah, man, like real quick, just introduce to the people who you are, what you do in real estate. Because, yeah, people should know that you're a freaking beast.
Dude, Jonah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. So, dude, yeah, like you said, I'm a real estate investor based out of Arizona. However, if you guys can see, I'm not in Arizona. I'm actually in Lake Tahoe. I run a virtual team currently. And so I figured why stay in the heat of Arizona when I can be in different places at different times. 31 years old, born in Argentina. Some fun fact about me. And that's kind of the quick intro. I'm sure we're going to get a lot deeper into it as we go through.
So what is your business, real quick? Like, what are you mainly doing? I know you were doing a lot with land for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wrapping land, I'm pretty sure. So like, are you still doing that? Like, what's your business?
Yeah. So currently I actually don't like the word wholesale. I say acquisition, even though the majority of what we're currently doing is wholesaling. But why do I call it acquisition? Is because we're actually I'm in that part of my journey that I'm trying to, let me rephrase that. Erasing the word trying out of my vocabulary. I'm working on moving from the part where you wholesale to acquiring. So I have an acquisition business.
You know what's the best way to do that, real quick, just as a advice?
Tell me, please.
Not even I'm working, not even I'm trying. I am whatever.
Ooh,
that's it.
Love that.
Don't add anything extra to it. Just a little quick mindset tip.
Dude, I love that. Thank you.
So sorry, keep going.
No, yeah, so that's exactly where I'm at currently. And it's actually, which is what we're going to cover a little bit later, it's technically my second swing at a team. Because for a long time, I was just solo running, doing everything by myself. And that has a lot of challenges. I mean, that I can list out a whole list of why not to do that. There's some benefits to it, but I'm at that stage where we're about 100 days into my team. And man, it has shown me so much more than just wholesaling. It's not about being on the phones anymore. Now it's about leading, showing, being the role model. And that's currently where I'm at. We're actually working on a partnership right now with a different team and to acquire a lot of stuff, a well-developed team that's been running for years. So we're essentially branching out to their creative branch, but more on that later. So that's where I'm at, Jonah.
Awesome, bro. Yeah, I know you're a beast, so I wanted people to know it real quick. So is it, just so I know, is it normal residential stuff, or is it land too, or like, is there any specialties?
That's a great question. Yeah. So it used to be land. That's how I started, but it's all single family residential right now. No condos, no apartments, no multi, just single focus on one thing. Because that's actually one of my weaknesses, is just the squirrel syndrome, which I think a lot of people can relate.
Well, 100%. I'm 100% going to get into that for sure. So my classic first question, as always, Luciano, is basically, when you were starting out, when you had just learned about real estate, what were the fears that were holding you back? Because there are people on here right now. We got 4 people watching currently. What were your fears? What was holding you back from just at least taking the first step? Like, what were your fears, and how did you overcome them to get to the place you are today?
Awesome. Yeah, I think the biggest fear I've had, funny enough, there wasn't one single thing. I just had this whirlwind of overthinking. And I still battle that. I still work on, hey, like, don't overthink that, just do it. But I've gone way, way, way better at that. But I used to be like, I need to know this, I need to know that, I need to know this. So it's like, I was afraid to miss the details. And if you do that, you're going to get into this paralysis analysis phase where you just sit there and overthink it. Oh, I need this. I need the right contract. I need the right this. And so for a long time, it was just like, oh, are you sure? It was just all this hesitation about taking whatever step I took, that it was going to be the wrong step. However, it doesn't even matter if it's a wrong step. As long as you're taking the steps, you're going to learn either way. But that was my biggest holdback, my biggest fear. It wasn't just one specific thing, but I would say it's just a whirlwind of overthinking. And I think that's a very relatable one. If I had to pin it down to one thing, it was always the contracts and the writing. Funny enough, that's actually my strong suit now. So I guess that's kind of comes back to,
let's talk about the overthinking for a second. I want to
Let's
talk
do it.
about the overthinking for a second because I think that's like one of the most common ones, analysis paralysis, that type of stuff. So, what do you feel like caused that? Like about like what was causing that, you think? And then secondly, how'd you get over it?
I think what caused that was my personality, I think, has changed through the years, but I used to be a little background about me. I used to be a nurse before that. I was a pre-med student, so I had all the science stuff going on in college. So it's very calculated, very precise, very accurate. And I believe a lot of that translated into the entrepreneur side of things. And I think it was just that kind of personality. And it's just having the fear of like getting things wrong. You know what I mean? If being a pre-med, if you don't get A's in all your tests, dude, you're not making it to med school usually. It doesn't, not always, but
Mhm.
you always push to have everything perfect. And so when I came into real estate, I think that kind of came about. And I was like, oh, I need this, I need that. And it's just like you really don't. You really don't.
Right. I feel like that's like one of the hardest issues for people, like coming from a school background into the entrepreneurship world, because I feel like that's one of the biggest issues with school is like there's one right answer and you better get it right or you're 100% wrong. While in real estate, in life, in entrepreneurship, there's a ton of different right answers and you just got to keep trying stuff until you find the one that works for you, right? So I think that's
Hmm.
super relatable, especially someone who was in the medical field. I think that's honestly makes a ton of sense that like you were so used to needing to get A's and like we all grew up with that, right? We all grew up with that from elementary school, middle school, high school, college, pre like medical school, all that type of stuff, right? So
Hmm.
it's super relatable and that totally makes sense. And then so what happened? How do you feel like you got over it?
So by sheer luck, I kind of going back. Let me give you a little bit. Let's rewind the timeline a little bit. Even though I always say I started with land because that's a true start to the journey, I actually technically had two wholesale deals that I did in 2018. And how that came about was that I found a mentor through a friend who was working for a real estate company. I didn't even know what, investment companies were actually a thing. I used to always think investors were people with a lot of money that wore suits and whatnot. And so one of my friends, I reached out to her and I was like, hey, what are you doing? I see you doing all this real estate stuff. I just read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was at that phase, the very, very beginning. And she's like, oh, I actually work for this investment company. I think you'd actually really like my boss. Let me introduce you guys. Sure enough, we went to lunch. His name is Brennan Reed. He actually still has a company. He's based out of Florida. He's amazing. We went to lunch and he never actually had a mentee. I was his first one. And so he was kind of pitching the idea, saying that his mentors were like, hey, man, you should coach somebody. And he kind of laid it on the table softly for me. And I was just like, are you asking me this? And then I hit him up later and I'm like, hey, man, like whatever you were talking about, like, let's do it. I don't care how. And so sure enough, he took me under his wing and dude, that helped. We agreed on half of any deal that we did together, which was half of any deal that I wouldn't have had otherwise, because he taught me how to, talk to sellers. Dude, he had me putting out bandit signs, all these things, which is crazy now thinking about it. But that's how I got over it. I literally had somebody hold my hand. And so we can speak about that too, how important having a mentor, having community is. So that was it.
Gotcha. I would say that is the most common and probably the best way to get into real estate. So really quickly talk about how'd you find your mentor? How did that come about? And then how would you recommend somebody else find a mentor? Because I think that's the difference, dude. I think that's the difference between success and not success is why would you reinvent the wheel? What are you doing? Like find someone who's doing exactly what you want to be doing and either pay them money or do something for them so that they're willing to mentor you. So, how did you develop that relationship, and how would you recommend somebody else develop a mentor mentee relationship?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when you first asked that, I wanted to automatically say, oh, I got lucky. But if anybody knows Marlon Johnson, mindset Marlon, my old roommate, he'd be like, that was not luck. That was you attracting it. Right. And so, because I was putting in the work, I
Mm,
was putting in the hours, I was reading, I actually reached out for help, even though Jesse's the one who introduced me. She wasn't the mentor, but she got me connected to somebody. So being curious and asking for help, I think, is the very first step, reaching out to people. But at the same time, and I didn't know this back then, but at the same time now I know, bring value, right? And that's I want to say it's very obvious, but if you're gonna say come up to somebody and say, hey, mentor me, come with something, right? Come with, hey, I'll I'll help around your business. I'll do, this if you need that, if you need, even if it's grunt work, that grunt work, even if you make $0 today, I guarantee you, if you stay with it 5 years, 10 years from now, the return on investment, that effort, that sweat equity that you put is going to be absolutely immense. Like, you can't even put that you can't even put a number to that. So that's what I would recommend. And always be a sponge, always want to learn more, always be curious. So that's kind of
So
the basics.
what value did you give to your mentor? Or like,
Yeah,
why do you feel like your mentor chose you?
funny enough, that's why I said I didn't know that back then. I would say that I didn't really come up with any value up front, but we talked, we had a meeting, we kind of set upfront expectations, and he said, if, he kind of vetted me to see if I would actually put in the work. And the value for him, it wasn't money up front, but it was half of, my first, I think we agreed on first 3 deals, and then it was supposed to be less after that and kind of taper off over time. So having that, having the hustle, having the sweat equity, and him knowing that he was going to get, half of each assignment that I made, that was the value that I kind of brought forward. So putting in the work, I think, was the biggest value up front. Sure enough, we both got paid some decent amount on some of those assignments. So
I think you're also downplaying yourself a bit, because I know that if that guy's doing tons of deals and he was willing to do a Zoom meeting with you, you seemed like you wanted it, right?
dude, he took me to
There's
lunch.
something.
It wasn't even
What?
Zoom. I said, he took me to, sorry to cut you off. I'm like, he took me to lunch and he paid. I was like, what? That was before the Zoom
There's
days.
something you did. I'm willing to bet $1 million that something you did was that you made it very clear that you were not screwing around, that you were, if you had this lunch, things were going to happen, right? I guarantee it. Otherwise, if he thought you were going to be a pushover and just do nothing, I highly doubt he would have met with you. I just want you to know that, even if you think back, because how long ago was this? Like 2 or 3 years ago now?
2018. We're talking 5.
4 years ago.
So 2018.
5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah.
So I just guarantee, like, you just need, I promise you that, like, there is that definitely was part of it. I just want you to know that. Like, do you feel like there was something else there?
I do within, and I'm hopeful that that's what he saw in me, right? But within, I had so much conviction, I had so much drive coming in. I had just graduated from nursing school about a year before that, and from the moment I hit that workforce, that W-2, I was already looking for a way out. So
Right.
I had that new guy hunger that's like, dude, I'll do anything. And it's just, I think it showed in my face, it showed in my demeanor, it showed in my eyes. Like I could definitely, dude, I actually kind of missed that being in the trenches days when I used to go put bandit signs. After the fact, I was like, oh man, I would never want to do that again. But now looking back, like how cool was that? I was literally going 3 a.m. in the morning, just bop, bop, tree, hammer. I never got to deal for my bandit sign. They were gone like the next day. But sure enough, man, it was cool. It was cool. And so I had that hunger, and I think that energy, people can feel that, right? It was there. And so I would say that was the determining factor for him to take me in and teach me. And so I'm forever grateful for that, because without that, I'm not sure, one little time, one little action, one little thing that people do for you can change your complete trajectory. So guys, like that goes for everybody, right? Whether it's a positive or negative thing, just know that help, that advice can change other people. I've seen new Subto students fly past me in their journey and tell me, dude, thank you for meeting with me when I was first starting. This is because of you. And I'm like, because of me? All I told you was to go do this, and that. But sure enough, they did it. And so just wanted to point that out.
100%. That's happened to me too, where I'm like, man, how the hell are you at this stage now? I'm like, I remember when you were just starting out, but it's all good. I love seeing people succeed. But how about, like, because like one of the things that you're going to get from this is people are going to reach out to you if they didn't know you beforehand, right? So ideally, like, how do you do that outreach, you think? Like, what would you want someone to say to you if they're like, damn, I love Luciano, I want him to mentor me? Like, what in the world, how would I reach out to you? How would I reach out to a Luciano, a Jonah Corchin, a Mindset Marlon, any of these people who could make us, we easily could make anyone tens of thousands a month and probably as soon hundreds of thousands a month, right? Mm-hmm. So how would you want someone to reach out to you? Like, what would make you want to mentor somebody?
It's definitely an action taker, right? I would like to see somebody who, you know, it's already in the business, it's already doing it, it's already looking to kind of take their where they're at now to the next level and showing that they're doing it already. And if they aren't, most of the time, my advice to them is, hey, go. You don't know what you're doing. Here's my actually best gift and kind of mentorship advice to you at this stage. If you're brand new, never done anything yet, is go read, this book, that book, this book, and then some of those to name out. If I would say Rich Dad Poor Dad is like a staple. If I would recommend for everybody to read that.
Always.
And then there's a few more, but at least that one, that's the one book that that's like my litmus test. If somebody wants advice, if somebody wants help and they're not in real estate at all, I say, hey, go read this. And I've had people read it like literally the next week and they're like, dude, that was so good. Like, holy crap, I'm so interested. But 90% of people never come back. And if you
Right.
can't read at least one book, then you're telling me already that like you're not that interested. You may just want to consume, but not actually necessarily take action. I mean, that's okay. They might be in that stage for a while. So was I. And then one day I was just like, dude, I started working like on my job and I was like, no,
Not
let
it.
me take it. That's when I reached out to Jesse, who connected me to Brennan. And then at that point, that's when I started my journey. So I would say if you're already taking action, let's go. It doesn't mean you don't have to even have done a deal. You can reach me on my Instagram. I can drop it. I'm not sure if I can drop it in the chat here or not, but I'm happy to do that.
Well, at the very end, I'll have you drop everything. Instagram,
Perfect.
all that. People have to stay till the end to know about you.
Hey, let's go. Love it.
But yeah, man, I love that. I'm stealing that. You have to read a book. I'm going to give you a book recommendation. You have to read it to me, and then I'm going to like test it. Maybe I might do it. I might test you a little bit to be like, okay, you are doing stuff, right? Because my issue is so many people hit me up, and I'm like, dude, I have no idea how to filter whether you're worth my time. I want to help you, but I've wasted so much time talking to people who just aren't going to ever do anything. So I like that. I'm going to do that and be like, you have to read a book before you talk to me again and prove to me that you actually want this. I really like that. So let's continue with the story. You're with your mentor. What happens?
So funny enough, the overthinking actually beat me again, but I'll get to that. So I started in 2018. We did a handful of deals. I want to say it was like 3 or 4. And then I don't think I was going about the wholesale thing correctly, or I just had this kind of like this imposter syndrome as well, which is also very common of, oh man, I'm not actually buying the house. I don't have any money, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like I'm lying to these people. Let me just go back to that comfortable zone that I was at and go back to reading bigger pocketbooks and going back to saving 20% down for a house when the market, even on 2018, was already doing that. So I would save money. Okay. Guess what? That down payment kept running away from me. And so I'm like, it's okay. I'll get it and I'll buy a house. I'll make it a rental. I'll buy one a year, so on and so forth. And then I just faded out completely. Fast forward, COVID started at the beginning of 2020. So I kind of just, about halfway through 2019, I just quit. Like, dude, quit. And so that's why I only did 2 wholesale deals and it started again with land. COVID happened, and then that's when I picked up land. But for me, let me go back to that quitting part, is the other thing that happened, which I want to make everybody aware of. Me and my mentor kind of started falling out. And I used to be like, why is he not really like, giving me his time and stuff? It was never him, dude. It was me. I was sitting there like overthinking everything. I was sitting there, asking, I don't want to say there's, stupid questions, but at the same time, sometimes there's too many questions. It's just like, hey, like, that doesn't even make sense right now why we're asking this. Just take the step, come back to me.
Yeah, no, but there are definitely stupid questions. I wanted to say there are definitely stupid questions, and Pace for sure gets mad at me for asking too many questions. There's a point where Pace definitely, he loves me to death, but he'll definitely tell you, it's like I annoy the hell out of him with asking questions where he's like, I'm going to give you the answer and then you're not going to accept it. And I'm like, you know what? You're 100% right, because I hate that answer. So like, it's completely true. And the 100%, you can ask too many questions and too many dumb questions.
Yeah. And that got to me, man. After a while, it was just like, I was just thinking 10 steps ahead when really I just needed to take 2 steps. Like, if you look at a stairwell, like, I would say 99% of people at 20-step stairwell, you're not going to just jump and get up there. There might be somebody out there, I don't know, LeBron James, something like that. But most people have to actually walk the steps to get to the top. And I was sitting here coming up with plans, coming up with things, and how do I get to the top step without even realizing that it's just as easy as taking step one, step two, step three, step four, and get in there. And that was just me, overthinking the whole thing. So we kind of fell out of contact. And then I was just like, nah, screw real estate for now. Let me go back to the job and whatnot. And then COVID happened, right? And I just kind of got fed up with, like I said, I was a nurse. And I was like, dude, like there's so much political, a lot more stuff in the inside, right? That I could talk about as well, but not to get into it. And then my friend was doing land. And so I was like, oh, I've done wholesale, I've done a few deals. Let me get into this. And then that's when I started getting into land. And that was actually cool because I believe that's actually what got me into creative financing because I was selling land on seller financing and such. And so I kind of started getting a little bit of that taste. And so that's kind of phase two of my journey. But shortly after
Love
I
it.
joined Subto.
What was your greatest challenge in that phase of your journey in like the first part? Like what I'm hearing is like you heard about real estate in 2018, you got a mentor, but then you didn't really follow through because for what were the reasons? Why do you feel like you didn't follow through in 2018 versus having to wait till the pandemic?
Yeah, again, I it's just overthinking everything, man. It's just maybe complicating everything. Like, oh wait, let me like, especially
Gotcha,
at
that makes
first, it was
sense.
just an Excel sheet and it was easy and it was simple and it was run. Then I found out about Podio and I was like, oh, let me build this thing out to make it a little easier in my life. And I'm not an integrator at all, but I was trying to automate everything. Dude, you guys, you cannot automate the work. The work is the work, right? You can automate things, you can automate parts of things, but actually doing the work, putting your nose to the grindstone, that has to be done. And I didn't realize it. I was just like, God, let me make all this like as automated as I can, and it actually completely drove me out of the business. And a lot of times I'm like, man, what could I have done by now if I would have just kept going in 2018? And I've kicked myself in the butt enough times about that, but I can't think that way because today is today. You can't really go back in time. And I'm just grateful for what I did learn in 2018, which is teaching me not to let go of this thing again because this is my only plan. I don't have a job. My nursing license expires next year, and there's just no plan B for me. So that's where I'm at. And so I'm glad I quit once because now it's teaching me not to let go of that again.
What made you quit? Because that not having a plan B, let's talk about that because I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and that's really scary for a lot of people. Quitting your W-2 is like super scary for most people. Like you have responsibilities. I mean, I know you're a younger guy. I don't think you have kids or a
Hmm.
wife. I think you have a girlfriend, but
Hmm.
but like definitely like what gave you the courage to finally quit? Was it courage? Was it like a drive? What made it where you were like, you know what, I'm burning the boats?
So I was picking up on the land business. This is fast forward 2021, beginning of the year, and I technically didn't just quit. I was a travel nurse, so it made it a little bit easier psychological to quit. With travel nursing, you have assignments with 13 weeks at a time. I had finished an assignment and then I could have picked up another one, but I said, let me actually give myself some time and then I'll pick up another one later on. But in the back of my mind, I knew like I'm not picking up another one. But I kind of lied to myself, saying, yeah, I think it's rough, I'll pick up another one. Dude, it got rough. I did not have enough money in the bank and whatnot to actually, the
Right.
money goes away really quick whenever you don't have a job. Even a little bit of income helps so much, whether it's for gas or whatever, right? But so that started to really bite me. And I'm like, dude, I got to get something going. I actually thought about picking up an assignment at one point. I was this close, and then I said, no, like just keep pushing, keep going. And yeah, so I literally had to lie to myself that I could always go back to the safety net in order to get away from the safety net. So that's kind of what helped me quit the job.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's interesting. So like that is cool in the sense that since you had a nursing degree, absolutely worst came to worst, you could pick up a job and get
Hmm.
money. So it like made you feel okay with like just taking a risk and taking a gamble. I like that a lot. I think that's like a really good idea for a lot of different people is having a skill like that where you can back up, fall on should everything else fail. I think that's I think that was like, I don't remember where I read that, like the 4 Hour Work Week or maybe or something like that, where it's like having a backup skill is always a good thing because then no matter what, even if all of your business stuff fails, if everything fails, you'll have that, which is good.
Hmm.
And that can definitely give you some like courage, because that's cool, because you can just pick up a job instead of having to have a 9 to 5 and making that like your life. So that makes a lot of sense. So let's keep going with your story. So you're doing land, you learn a little bit about seller financing, and then you hear about a guy named Pace Morby, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So, I was kind of in a rut in my life personally at the time, actually, how I ended up joining Subto. So I was doing land, but I wasn't as focused as I was at one point. I finished my last assignment. I was still doing land, but it was kind of like not going too well. Had some personal stuff going on. And I was just like in this rut that I'm like, dude, like I need something. I need a spark. I don't know what I need. I already knew about Pace Morby, and he was actually like my favorite real estate guy at the time. But I wasn't really trying to find a spark within Subto, within Pace Morby. I knew about the mentorship, but not too much. So what I ended up doing, literally as like therapy, I went to a real estate event. It's called the All In event in Phoenix, Arizona.
Carlos is.
Yep, Carlos's event. And dude, I was like, it almost like I have a hoodie, but it almost gives me goosebumps. I was like, dude, that event, it's just like re-sparked everything. I'm like, damn man, I gotta work harder. I gotta get this done. I just brought all this drive, which is what those events are supposed to do. But I swear it brought it out on me a lot more than like I would say 99% of the people on there, because I was in a rough patch. Sure enough, that's when I saw Pace Morby. That's when I talked to him for the first time. And after that event, I literally was like, there's nothing that's gonna get in my way from getting into this mentorship. And so I immediately worked on getting, I was like, who do I need to reach out with? I went on the website, and then sure enough, I had an interview with one of the intake people, and I was in by the end of the month, by the end of May. And that's where things like really started kicking up for me, right? The community was insane, as you know as well, Jonah. And I met so many people. And that point in my career, I started going back to like, dude, I felt, I felt back in the groove. But guess what? And this is why I said I still battle it today. There was so much information. Guess what this brain did? Oh my God, there's Airbnb. There's this. There's that. You know what I mean? And so it's just like overload. And that's been one of my Achilles heels, is just that squirrel syndrome that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast here. But man, that's kind of where things picked up. And I've had my ups and downs within Subto, but it's still my next challenge from that point, which we can talk about here in a minute, was solopreneuring and trying to do every single function of the business on my own. I think for a little bit that has value, but at some point you got to get a lead manager. You got to get a this. You got to get a that. If that's your avatar, right? If you're trying to form a team, if you have no money, which at that time I had like no money. So
Gotcha.
Lots of lessons through that part of the journey.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What was preventing you from making a team? I had the same problem too. Mine was I was afraid of spending money. I still have a little bit of a fear of spending money. Like it hurts me spending. Like I spend like 20K a month, 25K a month, something like that on my business every month. And that hurts, right? Because I used to, when I was a solopreneur, I spent literally nothing, probably like 2K a month, right? But I had to do everything also. So talk about that a little bit. What was preventing you from scaling?
I think at that point, it was imposter syndrome, plain and simple. It was why, I had done deals at that point. I understood some of the seller finance stuff, but it was more of like, should I be leading people? Am I at that stage? Do I have enough value in me? All stuff that's all up here. All stuff that's up here.
Stuff.
Yeah, man. And that's all the mindset stuff, which I know, Marlon has covered this in your podcast before, just saying, part of it's the business, but the biggest part is the mindset. And I said, no, I can just keep going. I can just do this. I can just do that. Like, I'm like, let me just get more deals. And it's kind of like, I'm always chasing my tail. Like, let me, a couple more deals so I'll get somebody. And it was just that. It was just me not wanting to delegate. And I think it was a little bit of that. Again, wanting to have everything right, because now letting go of a task, it's not necessarily, they may not do it at the level that you do it, right? But here's the thing that I hadn't realized back then. If you delegate a task that you can do at 100% capacity, if you delegate it to somebody who can do it at 80% capacity, That's a $10 an hour task. Now I can go do another task that maybe I'm not 100% capacity, maybe I'm 80% capacity here, but that's a $100 an hour task. Now you do the math, and even though this guy's not doing as good a job as you are, and you're not the expert at this, the grand total, the net positive is a lot greater than just doing 100% capacity of a $10 task myself. But it took me a minute to realize, and if you're not scaling, you're missing out on a bunch of opportunity costs.
Yeah. 100%, man. And I mean, like, also, what type of life do you want, right? Like, I was able to go on vacation last week because I have a team, right? They're still coming in. I still have a lot of work on how to motivate them and make sure they're bringing in deals and all of that. But it's a lot better than if I had nobody. There'd definitely be no deals coming in, right?
Yeah.
So 100% get it. It's like, what life do you want? How do you want to do this? Do you want to be wholesaling is like a great job, right? But you have to actually make a business in order for it to be really like an asset, like something that pays you every single month, right? My man, I appreciate you. I'm gonna end this. Next week, we got John Galan and Mahmoud together. They've both been on the podcast before, but they teamed up, and I want to see their progress since the last time I talked to them. They're freaking sick. I gotta hard cut it right now, but guys, thank you so much. We will see y'all at the normal time next week, 5 p.m. PST. Let's freaking go.
Let's go. Thanks, bro. Appreciate you. Thanks, everybody.